Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Geoff Mosher is here today. The Inside the Birds podcast on all your podcasting platforms. The Eagles, well, they're back, and we got questions. Mosher has answers. He joins me now on the Sports Bash Live. Talked a lot of Eagles in the last hour. A lot of thoughts coming on the text board as well. Keep them coming. 609-403-0973. Geoff Mosher's here. The Eagles are back. What's up, buddy?
Hey, Mike, how you doing?
Welcome all right,
back to training camp.
Yeah, man, training camp, birds on the field, questions to be answered. The first questions to be answered started today, and let's get right into it. You know, one of the big questions is going to be the running back spot. What are they going to do? Well, he indicated don't read too much into it. Guys are going to run with the ones, the twos, the threes. So are we going to get an answer, or is this going to be a committee?
Yes and yes. You know, it has to be a committee to start off with. When I say it has to be a committee, I mean, you've got so many qualified candidates for so many different roles, lead back, third down back, goal line, short yardage, things like that, that you need to give everybody a look. You're trying to keep everybody preserved and healthy. So it doesn't surprise me that you're going to see a lot of different combinations. It's not like right guard where you might just see one or two guys, maybe three, and not interchangeable, not from snap to snap. But running back, you're going to want to see guys in different positions, catching the ball, pass protection, blitz pickup, things like that. So you're going to have to get guys in and out there with the first team to give them an honest evaluation.
All right, let me ask you this question. I said something last hour, getting a lot of reaction to it. I want to see what your answer is. If they picked a lead back and health wasn't part of the, problem here. If someone was 100% healthy and was going to play all 16 games, is there one of these guys that you think would stand out?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think in some ways all of them would stand out for what they bring because you have a stable of good backs. Obviously, fully healthy Rashad Penny has a level of incredible explosion, right? I mean, we know that because when he's healthy, he's up around 6 yards per carry, which is the highest yards per carry average in the NFL. So, but also when healthy, DeAndre Swift brings a pass catching element to the backfield that Rashad Penny doesn't bring. And if we're having a conversation about the Eagles offense this year and needing to evolve and not be stale, then we need to have a conversation about getting running backs more involved in the passing game. So a very healthy DeAndre Swift, along with Kenny Gainwell, would be guys that you would want to see play that role of what a 3-down back looks like. Somebody who can run and catch equally well.
Yeah, I said Penny. To me, if Penny's healthy, if they were getting a fair competition, and health was not a factor here, you're healthy, you're on the field, I see you. I think it would be pretty clear that Penny is a cut above these other guys.
As a runner, absolutely 100%. And like I said, the proof is in the pudding. We have seen, when healthy, Rashad Penny tear up the league. You know, the last 5 games of that season, 2 seasons ago when he led the NFL in rushing in that span? I mean, this was no Bryce Brown, 2 weeks this was about a month to 6 weeks of just taking the league by storm and showing how explosive of a runner and balanced of a runner that he is. Unfortunately, that's just been, few and far between him staying healthy to be able to do that for a year or two.
Yeah, and look, he had the ACL injury in 2019, and some people say, well, that's a pretty serious injury. It is, but he's been better. I mean, he had the 2019, he had the knee injury. He's averaged 6 yards a carry twice since that time, so it doesn't seem like it's affected him. The other injury he had was a broken leg. We'll see this year how he bounces back from that broken leg last year, and I think that will be a big question for him. Where is he after that broken leg from last year? And I don't know if you've got a chance to see him at all at any of the camps or at mini camp, at all, or the training camp today. But he's just a physically bigger, faster guy than the other guys that he's in competition with right now.
Yeah, and don't forget, we've talked about this on Inside the Birds. A lot of people don't realize this, but he was a standout kickoff returner in college. So. And as far as we understand that they would like to try to get him involved in that, which is something that's sort of confounding for me because that's what the NFL tells you is that's the highest injury occurrence in the NFL. Someone returning kicks in the NFL. That's why they're basically on their way to trying to phase it out totally. But when you're the Eagles and you've got such a wealth of talent at the position, I suppose you can be a little bit more generous with how you use these guys. And if he can do that and bring the same explosion to the kick return game that he does when healthy to the running game, well, that's a pretty good weapon there.
Yeah, Rashad Penny, by the way, last year against the Lions, 17 carries, 151 yards, 2 touchdowns. Those are the kind of games. Week 18, a couple years ago, he had 190 yards on 23 carries when the Seahawks upset Arizona. He's had a lot of those. He ran for 170 yards on 25 carries and 2 touchdowns in a game in 2021. So he's the guy who has the big game in him. The other guys that were mentioned, Swift, Sermon, and obviously Gainwell, we'll see how they kind of mix in, because you wonder, Jeff, guys who are known for their pass-catching acumen first and they're running second, what is their role in this offense?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And, the good thing about the offense is that it has the ability to be so multidimensional that it's okay if you do a couple of things great and not one thing well, because somebody else might do that other thing well, and you could be a great complement. But that's all what the next 5 weeks are really going to intended to figure out.
Geoff Mosher, Football at 4. All right, the second question that right out of the gates for Nick Sirianni today is, what's up with right guard? And he came right out and said, we're going to start with Cam Jurgens there. So do you think Jurgens is the favorite? Do you think Jurgens is the guy? Or are they just giving him the first crack at it?
Probably a favorite because of a couple of factors. It's year 2 for him. He was cross-trained to guard a little bit last year before having to play center when Jason Kelce had the elbow surgery. He is a second-round pick. That would make him the highest drafted player competing at that position. So you put those 3 factors together and it would make sense. I would add in the 4th factor that as the backup center, or the heir apparent eventually to Jason Kelce, that Jason Kelce is probably not going to practice every single practice of training camp. They're probably going to want to preserve him. They're probably going to want to get Cam Jurgens, especially in those joint practices, right, some time against those other teams. So I think it makes sense to get Cam Jurgens the right guard reps to start off with right away before a situation arises where you got to move him to center because of, you're giving Kelce a maintenance day or whatever.
Yeah, because he said Jurgens, we're going to start with him right there, but that's where we'll start today. We'll see how it plays out. We've talked about over the years, whenever there's been injuries, Jeff, Jeff Stoutland doesn't like to move multiple guys. And that's why I look at Steen as maybe the favorite, because in the event that Kelce got hurt, you would have to move Jurgens back, and now you're moving 2 guys. So does that sound like a reason why Steen would be the favorite?
It sounds like a reason why the Eagles would want Tyler Steen to win the job, but I don't think they're going to play Steen there if they don't think he's better than Jurgens, just to make sure that Jurgens is there to be Kelce's backup, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So that'll all play out, because he did say, look, we're going to start Jurgens there out today, but that could mean someone else is there tomorrow. So those were the 2 real big ones. And then he was asked about his coaching staff and the fact that he's got all these new guys. He said, look, the offensive side, it will be a lot simpler. But he said defense is obviously different. It's just getting on the same page as far as all my expectations for how I want to handle different situations and different things, while letting Sean Desai, he's the coordinator. That's why we hired him, to do the job. What do you take from those comments from Nick Sirianni today?
Well, if you remember Jonathan Gannon, anytime he was under the gun, and more so 2 years ago, right, than last year for the regular season, whenever he was under the gun and sort of having to explain why quarterbacks complete high percentage of passes, why he doesn't blitz a whole lot, Jonathan Gannon always said, look, it is the core philosophy of the head coach of this team, Nick Sirianni, that we want to do 2 things really well. We want to create explosive plays, and we want to limit explosive plays. So he would go in and say, what we do defensively is meet the standards set by our head coach about limiting explosive plays. And for them to limit explosive plays, it was imperative that Jonathan Gannon felt that he should not blitz as much and leave guys in one-on-one, play his safeties the way he did back, and try to get that 4-man pass rush going, which they were able to do last year way more than they were 2 years ago. So I think that it's very important to understand that the entire program, and as this should be, by the way, and it is in many places with a good head coach, the head coach sets the standard. So when Nick Sirianni brings in a new defensive coordinator, he doesn't just say, all right, you go run whatever defense you want. He still has the template in place saying, you're going to call your defense because that's what I'm hiring to do. But what our general overarching philosophy is we don't want to allow the X plays, they call them, the pass plays of 20 or more yards. And so that's why, and that's what any head coach should do. You got to coach your coaches. You have to set the standard. You have to run a program. So it's not that surprising to me to hear Nick Sirianni talk about what he expects from Sean Desai under the umbrella of what Nick Sirianni expects for his entire Philadelphia Eagles team.
Yeah, and he did say the offense is a lot simpler, so I guess that makes it the indication there would be, Geoff, that they're going to look a lot similar on offense that they did to last year.
Well, ideally, I think Nick's getting better at also being, circumspect and not giving everything. It is simpler because your play caller is an in-house guy, and because most of your offensive brain trust is back. Nick Sirianni's back. Kevin Patullo's back. Jeff Stoutland's back. Marcus Brady is now a senior offensive assistant. He was here last year. He was helping the defense, but he's actually an offensive coach by trade. So he knows the plan because he was brought in last year. Whereas if you look at the defense, it can't be simple when you've got a new defensive coordinator, a new linebackers coach, 3 new defensive backs coach. Oh, and by the way, 5 to 6 new defensive starters.
Well, that defensive side of the ball, I think, is going to be a lot of storylines. We're going to be keeping an eye on all that. Football at 4, Geoff Mosher from Inside the Birds podcast is here with us, of course. Now, let's take a look at some of the things on that defensive side of the ball. They got asked today about the linebacker position. Howie Roseman answered that question. And it was, is there someone at linebacker after Morrow and Dean? How do you view that? No names mentioned. And is that an indication that they're not really comfortable with what they have there?
Well, I think also you heard Howie Roseman say, and was it it might have been talking about safety or something about how he's not afraid to still make moves to upgrade the team. So you would have to know that and assume that linebacker, of course, is one of those areas that he wouldn't be afraid to make a move at. Now, it would be a calculated move, and I know like a guy like Patrick Queen, his name comes up all the time. I don't think Howie Roseman is going to trade for a guy who's got 1 year left and looking for a big contract extension, unless he can get him for free, right? Because he's not going to pay that guy the contract that he's looking for. So why would you give up high draft pick for it? But again, that's a position where, go back to 2017, they pulled Donnell Ellerbe off the street and started him in the NFC Championship game just because he was a big body who could help them out on first and second down. So Howie knows that that's a position he can upgrade if need be, and probably wouldn't take a whole lot of resources or work to find the right guy to get in it to help out. Now you saw today, again, Nick Morrow started, Christian Ellis rotated in first team, so that's consistent with what we saw in OTAs, and is it a great situation? No, but we know that. We know this is Eagles linebackers that we're talking about.
Yeah, and somebody brought up on the text board earlier, they have a lot of running backs, as we talked about. You wonder if they make a call and see if anybody's interested in a swap for running back and line, which used to be the two glory positions of the NFL, and say, hey, we've got extra linebackers, you got extra running backs, let's flip them.
Oh, yeah. That would remind me of I can't even remember what year anymore. Is it 2012, 13? They traded a running back named David Fluellen, I think, to was it the Browns
Colts.
For Cody Parkey? The Colts, that's right. For I believe it was Cody Parkey, who became their starting kicker that year and actually had a pretty good year that year. So, yeah, a player-for-player trade is something that's – you just have to wonder who that guy would be. I mean, it's not going to be DeAndre Swift. You gave up a 4th-round pick for him. Would it be a Rashad Penny? I mean, you got to think if Penny's really healthy and productive, then he's going to be on the Eagles. But maybe a guy like Trey Sermon,
I can't imagine. Again, I go back to the Penny thing and said I can't imagine that they would want to give him. To me, if he's healthy, he would be the guy that is the biggest part of your offense at that position. That's just me. I don't know.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, we got a lot of weeks here, but yeah.
Yeah. I do want to get your, he was asked today about Nakobe Dean and what they saw in him last year. He didn't really get to see all that much, but Roseman said, hey, what we learned from Nakobe was the same thing we saw in college, and, that he has this tremendous passion for the game and that, he has, basically, it sounds like they're looking at this guy to step in here and kind of take over that role and be a big play linebacker.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and they had the luxury last year of basically giving him a redshirt year. He could learn the program, learn the system, keep his body fresh, right? Because that was sort of an issue coming out of Georgia, all the wear and tear that he had taken in his few years at Georgia. And now it's his time to shine. Now it's his time to show everything that he showed in college as a leader, as an instinctive athlete, as a diagnoser of offenses. And, he's got a nice defensive front there in front of him that if it plays well, should keep him clean. And yeah, this should be his year to show that maybe he should have been a higher pick than falling to the third round. But at the very least, it should be his year to show he's what you expect from an Eagles linebacker.
Yeah. Roseman said, tremendous passion, tremendous love for the game, tremendous work ethic. He was around the ball in every opportunity he has, which isn't wrong. I mean, I remember the one game that he got snaps in, he seemed to lead the league. And I think he led the team in tackles. He only played like 9 plays in that game. He was all over the place.
Right.
But a lot of the descriptions you hear about him are similar to stuff they used to say about Hurts.
Very much so. Yeah, that's a fair comparison. Just everything head and shoulders in the game, knowing it from top to bottom, having a great sense about him. You also heard that, by the way, about TJ Edwards. I mean, that's, if you want to draw a comparison, a guy who now Nakobe Dean might be a better athlete because TJ Edwards came out of Wisconsin kind of knocked for not being a great athlete, and it turned out he would shed some pounds. He did a really good job of getting his body in shape to do what he needed to do, but mentally and character-wise and leadership-wise, it was all there for him. He just needed the opportunity.
Would you have liked to seen Jalen Hurts on the quarterback Netflix show, or is that too much of a distraction?
Well, I have to admit I haven't seen the show yet. I've heard it's very good, and I do plan to watch the first season pretty soon. I'll say that I applaud Jalen Hurts for saying, no, I would like to just focus on football. I think that not a lot of guys do that these days, and I think that's just another example of Jalen Hurts putting football number one on his priority list above other things. And I'm not saying that anybody who did, like Patrick Mahomes, I think was in the first season, right? So
yeah,
so
the one
I'm
that
not
just came out. Yeah, he just.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and say, well, Patrick Mahomes clearly doesn't put football number one on his priority list because he appears in the series. I'm not saying that at all, but I'm just generally just looking at it from a Jalen Hurts viewpoint and saying he just decided not to add something to his plate and continue to be just all football.
Football at 4 is into the training camp season. Geoff Mosher, InsideTheBirds.com and the Inside the Birds podcast. They're along the whole way for us here as we get ready for Eagles training camp, leading us into that first game, August the 12th, against the Baltimore Ravens. And you can hear that game right here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Geoff Mosher, Birds are back, and football at 4 never went away. Good to see you, man.
You too. Talk to you soon.
All right, Mosher's back next week here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.